Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, and I'm joined by the founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan.
Hello, Chris. Good to talk to you again.
Hello today, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah? How's the week been?
Do you know, full on. Completely full on. I've been out and about, spreading the wealth building and the SSAS building word out there across the country. I was in Rugby last week in Leeds, which is good distinction to share with you later. I'll be in London next week and then Manchester the week after that. And
a bit of good news, haven't you?
A bit of good news, yeah. Well, one bit of good news actually is I've passed my very first level of qualification towards being a sommelier.
Oh, congratulations.
Now, for the purposes of our wealth building audience, Chris, it's not because I want a job.
No.
I think you got that right.
Where's our samples today?
No, it's for me to taste, not for you. So I'm looking forward to boring as many people at parties as I can about the quality of the wine. But the second thing, the most important thing, is my speaking engagement next year on a wealth building stage to 2,000 business owners has been confirmed, and I'm second on stage, and followed only slightly later by Mr. Bob Geldof, or Sir Bob Geldof. So, wow. Hey, he's following me.
He's got a tough
I'm his warm-up act.
Well, that's good. That sounds like a really busy week. And you've been up and down the country, I know. And you said you met up with some of our foundation members a couple of weeks ago up in Leeds.
Yeah, I went up in Leeds and I was doing some speaking there, but took about an hour or so out because, you know, I'm big on trying to maximize the amount of time that I'm available to people wherever I go, and we try and broadcast that, don't we, as well? Because I just love doing that, meeting people together. So we had a wealth builder huddle in a lovely hotel in Leeds, and I had some very interesting questions coming out from some great people up there. So, you know, David Johns was there. I think we're hearing from him.
Yes.
It was very important to hear from him on that one. Louise Wrighton, full of, you know, great thoughts as well.
Yeah.
And great to see her posting so avidly on the Facebook group. And that's wonderful. Martin Hutchinson as well. And Mark Perry, who's a coach, but he's an open-minded coach in learning about wealth. And the, you know, the all ever sort of enthusiastic George Darmanin, who's gets to as many events as he can, and he's like a sponge, sucking up information and ready to take action at any time. And the thing that came to me as a distinction from them all, Chris, was this idea of trying to find and the way they can maximize the use of their time.
Well, we said last week, didn't we, that we would find time to talk about this in a bit more depth. And it stems from leverage. And we did a whole episode back in Wealth Talk Number 11.
Number 11. Wow, that long ago.
Yeah, which was how do you leverage different areas in your life?
Yeah.
I think this question came up with the group in Leeds.
Yeah, we were talking about leverage, and I think one of the smart questions was, so Kevin, what's the most important form of leverage? And we know from the podcast there, it's FIRST, which are the 5 sources of leverage. And go listen to the podcast if you don't know what the others are yet, because it's very insightful. But the T is time. And the reason why time is the most valuable source of leverage and should be the first point of leverage is because without time, you cannot leverage anything else. So, you know, you can't leverage your money. You can't leverage your relationships. There's just no form of leverage that doesn't need time to enable it. So the starting point for all of our Wealth Builder students, those who crave and want to move towards security, then into independence, is this need to make the best use of their time. And then for many people, just to carve out a bit of time, because many of them are holding down the aspiration of being wealthy, but stuck in a job.
Well, we're actually going to hear from 3 people later on in this episode who share those different experiences of, you know, having a job and managing that alongside, you know, starting a business, building property portfolio.
Yeah, and it's great because I think the 3 different people all approached it very differently. And we'll hear one carved out a little bit of time, one carved out, you know, a whole, 20% more time. Fantastic. And the other was like, well, I've had enough. I'm giving it full time now.
Yeah.
So, being full time in wealth is wow. I mean, that will just accelerate anybody who does that. But we recognize, and we must say very clearly, we will never ever suggest that someone gives up their job and completely shifts from being trading time for money to trading time to build wealth. It's a transition. Absolutely. And everybody should approach it cautiously, carefully, and in the right way that suits their dynamic. And so we definitely don't want to give everybody the impression they should sack the boss today.
Well, I was just going to say, I might have written a book which has that kind of title, but
you can do it gradually.
For anyone who's read the book will know that is not the way that I recommend going about it.
Yeah, quite.
And we've titled this podcast episode today, Kevin, Becoming Wealthy Only Takes One Day a Month.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about the meaning behind this.
Well, Bill Gates quoted, didn't he? He said, most people, well, the quote, you've used it with.
Yeah, he said most people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years.
Yeah. So, the question that, we'll often see people, and I think definitely came out with the Leeds group, was they get overwhelmed. There's so many whats they could do. Ooh, what could I do? What could I do? What could I do? Should I do this strategy or that strategy, this tactic or that tactic? There's lots of whats. And when you get lots of whats in front of you, you get confused, and confused minds shut down. And they don't take action because they keep going, well, what if that was better, and what should I do first, and so on. And the way to think about that is in the context of that quote, is not to try and do everything, and not to try and assume you can create wealth even in a year. But if I ask anybody, could you move from being in your job now to being completely financially independent in the next 12 months? They'll say they can't do it. They will definitely feel they can't do it. But if you say, well, what if I gave you 10 years and you had some support and you had some education, and you made all the right connections, do you think you could do it then? And they all think they can. And this is the context, I think, for this, is that anybody can create financial independence in a decade, and therefore don't think or don't worry about trying to do it in a year. In fact, all you really need to do is just imagine that if you know you can do it in that period of time, and everybody can, I haven't met anybody who can't do that in 10 years, then all you really need to do is then work out, if you think 10 years is not very difficult to work out how many months, right? It's 120 months.
Yep.
So if you just take each month and take one action, you could take one action this month and you don't have to get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So your framework for thinking about wealth is no longer about the what. It's what can I do this month?
Being proactive rather than reactive.
And do one thing, and that wouldn't be too difficult to help them do one thing. And then next month, you're going to do slightly better. And the next month, slightly better. And the next month, slightly better. So what you're doing is you're not in a linear fashion moving your wealth by 1/120th. You're accelerating, compound and compounding, learning and growing and changing as a person. And your perspective constantly changes if you do something that you will commit to this month. And that's why I say, never let 30 days go by without making a commitment to taking some action into building your wealth. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Right at the beginning, it's like baby steps. It's later you can do so much in 1 month, especially if you've created more time to do it anyway. So at the beginning, just think about the best thing you can do this 1 month. So the very next month, choose one thing. Do it well. Don't do it half-assed. Do it well. And give feedback to your buddy or your coach and hold yourself accountable to do that. Yeah. I'm hoping the buddy system has sorted itself out by now, or maybe it's getting close to that.
Yeah.
Because we can't be there to hold everybody account every month.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, so should we perhaps have a listen to some of our members now and see how they've managed to carve out more time?
Sounds great.
So I'm with Steve Hall, one of our Foundation Programme members. How are you today, Steve?
I'm very well. Thank you, Chris. Yourself?
Yeah, very good, Steve. Now, I know that you have approached the subject of saving time or finding more time in a quite methodical approach, and that includes planning and scheduling your time. So would you mind sharing with our listeners about how you've gone about that process, please?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you can do all the planning and all the rest of it, but I found that unless I had some specific tactics that I could use to push away all the distractions and really focus, then having plans was great, but I still wasn't getting stuff done. So I use the idea of Pomodoros, which is really, it's just a 25 or 30 minute slot of time. So I put a timer on my watch. I stick on my noise cancelling headphones and just focus on what it is on my list that I need to get done, and just keep going until the timer goes off. So that's definitely one key thing that's worked for me really, really well over the last couple of years.
Brilliant. And of course, you're using your time to focus on your business, which you've mentioned, but would you say there's any other benefits of managing your time in the way that you have done, Steve?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I found right at the start when I was starting my business, my time tended to get skewed either towards my business or towards my day job or towards personal things. So I was going kind of up and down and not really finding a balance. Once I got all of these routines and habits in place, I found that I had a much better balance between all three. And I've constantly getting good results at work, getting good appraisals, getting promotions. Stuff at home is going really, really well. I'm not really dropping the ball on things like I used to do. It helps me to manage really all of the big things to do with my business or my job, right down to really small things like making sure I pick up the right groceries on the way home from work or something, something small like that.
Great. Well, thanks so much for sharing those time-saving tips with us today, Steve.
No worries. You're welcome.
I'm with Varun Agarwal today. How are you, Varun?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks, Chris.
Now, I know that you're a contractor and you've been able to carve out more time for yourself. Would you mind sharing how you've gone about that, please?
Yes, sure. So, yes, like being a contractor has its own advantages, but like I still think, you're still like working 9 to 5 and 5 days a week. And if you want to do something else like properties, trading, or anything else you want to do it side by side, it becomes quite time consuming. And so that's why, it got me thinking, I need to like dedicate some time to this thing. And then I thought, okay, like how about like taking a day off? And then I thought, okay, like let's take Friday off. So initially, like it was like Fridays are already quite light, so it might not be a good idea. And Mondays, we all know, like it's always a Monday blues we all get. So I was like, okay, let me decide on Monday. But working one day, which means like it's a 20% of my revenue. So I don't want to impact my day-to-day revenue as well. So what I did was, because I had a good rapport with my client, I went to see them as like it was a time of the contract renewal. So I was like, okay, it's like I would like to increase my rate. And because they knew like, yes, I was doing good and like they needed me as well. And the services I was providing was far more than like the value which they were getting was far more than they were paying me. So they were happy to increase my rate. And then they popped the question. I was like, how will you feel if I work 4 days a week? And to my surprise, yeah, they were quite open to that. And the thing is, like, I realized, like if they have said like, no, I might have walked away as well. So they might have agreed to 4 days a week because I was still able to deliver a lot of stuff in those 4 days and then like losing me at all and hiring someone else.
Okay, so 3 points that came out of that for me, Varun. Firstly was the timing. So you timed it well to ask. Secondly, you actually did ask. So that's important. And it reminds me of a quote from Jim Rohn that you don't get paid for time, you get paid for the value that you put into that time. So now that you've got Mondays every week available. How are you putting that time to good use?
Yes. So taking Mondays off has given me dual benefit. So one is obviously I've got a one full day to work on the things I like to do in the long term. And the second benefit which came as a result of that was my productivity over the next 4 days increased quite dramatically as well, because I didn't had any Monday blues. And the week passed quite quickly as well. So I was able to do much more things as well during those 4 days. So that was a one side. The second side was I was able to utilize Mondays for doing I was able to dedicate a time for my trading, which I learning trading, which has been there for years. I can't even remember, for 8-9 years, I would think, but I never had a time dedicated to that, to spend that. I know people does that, but I've got a family as well, so I didn't want to take away time from them. So I'm able to learn some of the trading stuff, and then obviously the properties is another thing which has been I've been interested in, and I've been able to do viewings over Mondays. And the benefit on Mondays is because very less people are asking for viewings. Agents are able to accommodate much more as per my schedule, so I don't have to work as per their schedule. So they're happy to accommodate as per mine. And I'm able to get dedicated viewings as well. I don't have to go into open days and crammed into a house full of people as well. So it works pretty well. And then I can do a lot of research on Mondays if I've got any query. All the professionals are at my hand. So if I have to mortgage query, I can quickly call my mortgage broker and ask a query. If I'm doing over the evening or over the weekend, I have to wait for the next day to get the answer. So yeah, it works in some times, but most of the time you need a quick answer to get things progressing to make the decision. So that way it has worked pretty well on Mondays as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us today, Varun.
No problem.
So I'm with David Johns, one of our foundation program members. Welcome to Wealth Talk, David.
Morning. How you doing?
Very good. Thanks, David. Now, would you please share how you have managed to create more time in your life and how that's allowed you now to focus more on your wealth building activities?
Yeah, sure. So, I was 20 years, Lloyds Banking Group IT, but I'd had my company running since the end of 16. So, many of the listeners, I think, will be aware of how difficult it is trying to get a business off the ground whilst doing a full-time job as well. The opportunity presented itself where I had to effectively reapply for my own job. So in a selection and assessment process. So I decided at that point, in discussion with my wife, that actually we were in a position now where if I could get voluntary redundancy, she would support me in doing that. So effectively I had a word with my boss, and I said, look, I don't want to get a job. I've got these other plans. Can we work together to ensure that that's where we get? So that's what we did. It worked out well. I got the voluntary redundancy to the end of, the start of September last year was my last day in work. And that's clearly given me all day, every day, pretty much to concentrate on running my business and building my wealth.
Which of the 7 pillars are you focusing on, David?
Yeah, so my primary pillar at this point in time is property. So that's the business that I've got is a property business, but we're bringing pensions into that as well. So I opted out of my workplace pension and moved that into a SSAS. So Empowered Pensions are looking after that for me. And there's various things happening with that which are enabling me to drive my business forward. The SSAS has been a big game changer for me. I know you've covered SSAS on other podcasts, but that's allowed me to move forward as well. But it's allowed me to move forward by enabling my property journey.
Okay. And what are some of the specific things now that you have more time that you're able to do, which you weren't able to do when you were working, 5 days a week? Yeah, so
obviously meeting people for coffees, which your net worth is your network, is I think true. For me, I'm a star profile in terms of wealth dynamics. So, meeting people and discussing how we can add value to each other's journey there is great. And, I can do that with other property professionals that have got time during the day. When I'm in the car, I'm generally listening to a podcast or an audio book or anything along those lines as well. So, I'm leveraging the time that I'm sat in the car doing that. It's given me lots of opportunity for networking with other people and for education and for researching and just for generally trying to drive my business forward. But, it's also given me the opportunity to spend time taking my kids to school and picking them up and various things that were becoming difficult while I was in full-time employment as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, thank you very much for sharing your story today with our listeners, David.
You're very welcome, Christian. Thank you.
Okay, so let's pick up then on what Steve said at the beginning there. And Steve approached it quite methodically and really mapping out time. And you have to do that. You have to almost diarise your wealth building time, don't you? Otherwise, life will get in the way.
Yeah, it's not too difficult, is it? Steve's a smart guy, but when you think about it and analyse what he did, I was actually most interested in the motivation. But if you think about what he did, was he just simply got into a different habit in the same way as people do so when they're getting fit or, they're studying. It's just a habit. And once a habit's ingrained, it's there pretty much forever. So if Steve has got those habits now, nothing will really hold him back. So we definitely encourage anybody to get into the habit of giving some time. And he managed to do it almost every day. He didn't just take one day and do something particular on one day. He's doing something every day, and that's good. He's getting up earlier, and reflecting at the end of the day. But I think the most important thing, although there's different techniques, I've never heard of a tomato as a technique before.
Pomodoro technique, yes, it's been around since around the 1980s, and Italian gentleman, and came from that kind of tomato timer, so that's where the name came from. And 25-minute chunks seems to be a good period of time, and then having a short break, and just getting into a rhythm like that. So that's working for Steve, and I know that's popular technique, which we can share in the show notes for today as well. Yeah,
anything that really works for anybody. I'd never heard of it really, and that's because I suppose I'm full-time in wealth building and have been for decades now, so I don't think about, my whole life is just constantly focused on it, so nothing ever deviates me from that, even when I'm drinking wine, so it's ingrained in me. But what I liked about Steve's other point though was the balance. And I think Dave also mentioned it as well, didn't he? It's about creating balance in your life, and often when you're trying to build wealth at the same time as holding down a job, the balance can get a bit out of kilter, and normally that could be the family. But what I was impressed by with our guests there was the way they're trying to get their life in balance and putting wealth in the balance, because that's future security for the whole family, but keeping the family, really high priority right now. And that's a key one that sometimes gets missed, particularly those people trying hard at the beginning to give a bit of impetus to their wealth to balance the family as well.
Yeah, very important. And Varun there, did a pretty good job.
Salesman.
Did a pretty good job there. So.
Good old Varun. I love the way he did that. I'd like to get paid more. All right, so let's say he got paid 20% more, and now I want to work 20% less. So it's like I'm getting the same money for 4 days than 5 days. That's so smart. But, Varun's a smart guy too. And what he's managed to do then is just actually be bold. He courageously took a step. And you can do that with your job as well. That was a contract, fair enough. But there are bosses too who will allow that freedom and that flexibility. Sometimes for people to work from home, sometimes for people genuinely to take time. Some jobs won't allow that at all, and it'd be a no-no. But wherever it's possible, negotiate that time. He did a great job.
Yeah, and that's allowed Varun now to focus on Pillar 4, property portfolio, really accelerate
and trading, of course.
That's right, and then extra time now to learn that new skill.
Yeah. And actually, we will come on to trading when we deal with investments, because not everybody who's investing in the stock market wants to do it passively. So we'll touch on trading in a future podcast.
Yeah, that's coming up very soon indeed. And then finally, we heard from David there.
Yeah.
So he just said, sack your boss. let's create.
He's like, I'm all in. I wouldn't want to play poker with him. He'd be terrible. He'd be winning everything. So, no, I mean, he's very committed and so enthusiastic. And now he's living his wealth dynamic. He's focused on property. He's got some financial leverage. He's a great ambassador in the community. I think the wealth building world, from our perspective, is a brighter place with Dave in it. He's doing a great job for himself and so much more he wants to give back. He's attending lots of things, as he said, he loves to do it, but not for personal gain, but also for that gain he gets for giving the gift of trying to help others. And he was at Leeds as well, and he'll be in Manchester next week. And so he's just really, really keen. So, personal shout out to Dave, who's, so much of a giver. But I'm certain, though, that he'll get to his wealth plan, his objectives so much more quickly, because now he's got all the time. And also it's given him a lot more time because we have conversations quite regularly as well. Spoke to him just a couple of days ago, in fact. So, he's definitely going to accelerate that. But he made that decision. And, remember, he banked some money from a redundancy, which then gave him a cushion, whereas most people who've got a job don't have that cushion. So either save that cushion or try and get it another way like he did. So
yeah. So key message, if you're serious about building wealth, you have to find a way to manage your time effectively.
You can't build wealth on hope alone. You can't wish you were wealthy. You have to make time to do it. The whole point of the Wealth Builder community is to accelerate that time, is to give people a better result for the time they give to it, because they've got all the huge resources and benefits of, themselves, their buddies, the Wealth Builder community, you as a coach, me as a coach, all of these things, all of our connections. We've got, thousands of people, who are in a trusted place with us now, and that's growing all the time. So I think the real positive chances with all that support is all you've got to do at the beginning is carve out that some initial time. And if they do that, 120 months or less, it's not that hard, is it? I mean, crumbs, most people work 10 years and then, a blink of an eye, and they're still in the same job, doing the same thing, going round again. 10 years of a little bit of hard work, not massively, but actually less than that. In truth, most people can do it within 3 to 7 years. So most people will get there quicker. Starting point, don't worry about trying to get there quicker. Take the pressure off. Don't put yourself under an overwhelm. Don't put yourself under that cloud of being overwhelmed. Just start with doing the best thing you can this month, holding yourself accountable. Find a buddy to hold yourself accountable to and say, this month, I commit to doing this. And then commit to it and do it. And then you get the feedback and you move on. And that's all you have to do. It is really that simple, Chris. I just wish everybody would get that simplicity and take the right action and start there.
Yeah. Reminds me, episode 2, still one of the episodes that people refer back to when we speak to them. The 3 Ds, don't be a drifter.
Yeah.
Take control of your time.
Yeah.
Put it to good work.
It's very easy to drift in a very busy world. So no wealthy drifters ever. Maybe only the drifters and musicians, right? But long ago. But no drifting ever makes anything, because you're rudderless. So get a bit of focus. Anyway, I think we've got the lesson well across today, I think.
We have, yeah. So next week,
I think we're back on
Pillar 3.
Pillars now. Yeah, I think investing, and that's a biggie too, because it's a big old topic. Everything from stock market, alternative investments, ISAs, national savings, the whole gamut of things people can do to create wealth. And I'm going to dispel a myth, Chris, next week. I'm going to shoot a sacred cow squarely in the head and say you've been taught something in your investing life that is entirely the opposite of what you really should be doing. So watch out for that one.
Love leaving us on a cliffhanger. Thanks for that today, Kevin.
You're welcome.